I'm Linda Coles, and this is Tell Us a Story. Bruce Kasanoff and Amy Blaschka are the co-authors of I Am, Escape Distractions, Unlock Your Imagination and Unleash Your Potential. Bruce is a ghostwriter who believes in enlightened self-interest and has used it to build a huge following of over 700,000 people. He offers a wealth of proven tips that others can use effectively. And Amy is a writer and a brand strategist and one of the most positive and popular storytellers on social media. Her engaging communication style has earned an enthusiastic following on LinkedIn, Thrive Global and Medium, where she aspires to inspire transformation. So here to tell us more, talk about their book and talk about their lives, welcome to the show, Bruce and Amy.
Thank you, Linda.
How are you?
Thank you, Linda. Nice to be here.
Good to have you.
We're spread around the world right now. So
we are. So, Bruce, where are you?
I'm in Park City, Utah, in a mountain town about 7,000 feet high.
Wow. And Amy?
I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area in a very flat area.
And I'm in rural New Zealand at the moment, so we are spread around. Well, that's the power of the internet, isn't it? That allows us to do this sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's magical. I still think it's kind of, how can this work? But it seems to.
It does. So, Bruce, let's start with you. Take us back to Bruce as a young man, I don't know, sort of a teenager or early 20s. What did you want to do? And did you ever get to do it, to be it?
Well, so it's pretty interesting that what Amy and I are doing right now is very, very close to the debate that I had so I came out of college and I knew I wanted to work in television somehow, but, I went in the United States, we have what's called public television. It's funded by the government, but they're independent entities. And I was trying to get into one of the best ones, which was in Boston. And I had this debate, do I volunteer, because you had to volunteer to get in, to go to the business side, or do I volunteer to the creative side? And I couldn't bring myself to say, I'm going to go to the creative, meaning production, TV production, making television programs. So I went to the fundraising side, which was where the income came from. And, but I just had this, I'm not sure about this. And flash forward all these years, and that's actually what Amy and I spend most of our time about, is trying to, I would now say I'm absolutely creative. And there's no doubt I'm a writer. I spend all my time thinking up new ideas, either for myself or other people. So I had this giant detour, which turned into, over decades, I kind of went to the creative side. So yes, I got to do what I want to do.
Well, that's pretty cool. So, I mean, you're a ghostwriter now. Is that the main part of your job, or is that just a part of it?
Well, so I get paid to do ghostwriting. We have a lot of similarities, I think, between us. And but I would, I spend at least half my time doing the things that interest me, whether, Amy and I writing a book, I've written books of my own, thinking about, where do the books lead to? Do they lead to speaking? Do they lead to community building? And so I basically do enough ghostwriting. This sounds horrible, but I write for people who interest me, who really have something to say, who I feel that my talent can magnify their talent. And that's what I try to do.
So who you use as a ghostwriter? Who's your target market, if you like?
My best client, or my best client profile, I guess, are people who understand the value of intellectual property and of reach, meaning, reaching out to other people, like you and I have done, and but who either they don't have the time to write themselves. So, for example, most of my clients will call me up and we'll talk for half an hour or an hour, and I'll produce something out of that conversation. Mm-hmm. And so for them, it's a lot faster for them to do that. And some of them, they freeze up, when they get in front of a keyboard. But I have consultants, I have a lot of speakers, I have authors, which is kind of ironic, but I have a lot of authors as clients. And then I have startup founders and a few executives. I actually have less executives, meaning, big company executives, than I would have guessed when I started to do this. They tend to have in-house teams and committees and all sorts of things. And, my audience or my clients are people who it's just them. They're the only person who has to approve it. So I send them a draft and they say, great, and we're done.
Well, I've heard of some authors, funny you should mention it, that particularly in the non-fiction genre, that can't finish their book for whatever reason, deadlines, things just got out of hand, and a ghostwriter's had to finish it off. Have you had to finish anybody's book off?
I just did that once. I actually stay away from other people's books because I do mostly Forbes articles, things like that, Inc. magazine, online things. I like to say I have a short attention span, so my typical assignment is about 2 hours long. And so I did finish one book. That was the first ghostwriting thing I ever did. Was I ghostwrote a book that another ghostwriter created on. She was supposed to deliver the whole book, and she only had one chapter, and I took it over.
Oh.
But you can spend. Jeff Hayden, he's another LinkedIn influencer. He ghostwrites books, and I don't know how he does that. It takes too long.
Yeah. I believe you even write on your skis. What's that all about?
Oh, so yeah, I have a big pair of powder skis. They're like surfboards, and they were testers. They were media testers, so they were painted black by the company that made them. And then I bought them from the company. And so they were black, they were ugly. And so my son came up with the idea, like, Dad, why don't you just write, on every powder day you have? And we decided that, I don't know how to convert this to metrics, but 6 inches or more, I write in gold metal marker on the ski, where I skied, sometimes with whom, and how much snow there was. It's a great conversation starter. Everybody asks, what are you doing with those skis?
It's a bit like when people write on someone's cast, isn't it, when they broke their arm?
Yeah, except that I don't throw my cast away after 6 weeks. I keep it. So you can see where I skied last year and this year. And eventually I'll have to buy new skis because I run out of space to write the days.
Yeah.
It's a good problem to have.
Yeah. Do you get much snow where you are?
Normally we do. Park City is a mecca for skiing. This has been a bad year, so but we get what would it be? We get like how to do it 300 to 400 inches, so 30 or 40 feet snow. So
Jeepers creepers.
It's a good place to come. We actually have a lot of people from Australia, New Zealand, all over the world come here because it's Utah powder, which is very light. It's like a dream for if you're really into skiing.
Oh, I know. It's not something this family does, really. We've all got crooked knees. So, skiing's not good for knees, is it?
Did you have duct tape in New Zealand? That's what duct tape is for. You just tape up your knees and you go skiing anywhere.
That's what it's for.
Oh, yeah.
So, Bruce, just another question to you then. You're also a LinkedIn influencer with a huge following. About 750,000 people follow you now on LinkedIn. Has that opened doors for you? Has that been useful to you, that status?
Yeah, sure. I mean, with ghostwriting, it's been wonderful because pretty much all my business, aside from referrals, comes from LinkedIn and from my visibility there. But I think on a higher level, when you and I became influencers about the same time when the program just started.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but I felt like, how did I get in? I'm not really sure. It was the first time in my life that I didn't have to write about what my job was. I was coming out of customer experience and marketing and personalization and I wrote a few articles about that and no one, you could read Richard Branson, how he's, taking over the world. You could read my thing about customer experience and the 4 steps, and no one read it. And so I sat back and I said, what's important to me? And I decided that what was important to me was doing well by doing good, altruism, and kind of re-injecting humanity back into the business world. And it was a revelation for me because, people would read that. It was just having an audience and using it to turn inward and say, well, what are my values? And I just think that's that's kind of what our book is about, turning inward and trying to figure out, what do you stand for? I'm a writer, I'm a creative person, what is it? So the influencer thing for me really was a gift to help me learn about myself.
Yeah, and I would agree with you there because, when you sort of look at the other influencers, Barack Obama and Branson, you've already mentioned, you sort of think, whoa, these guys are way up there. They're running how many millions or billions. What am I going to write about? So I took the same sort of tack as you, and I started talking about, using manners in business or being human, and all those things that were important to me. So yeah, it's been good. All right, well, let's have a chat to Amy now. Amy, your LinkedIn profile says that you're a storyteller. Tell me more. You write people's stories for them.
Yeah, well, I've always been that person that people tell me things. So, my tagline is people tell me things and I write their stories. And that's been true my entire life since I was a child. And I think one of the reasons is people fascinate me. And I love to learn what makes them tick. And I think everybody has a story within that is worth sharing. Sometimes the people that I work with don't even realize what their story is. So I help sort of identify and unearth it and then help them articulate it in a really compelling way. So bringing it to life. But the stories can be literal stories, of course, but really it's more the strategic stories. So it might be a way that they help sort of position themselves. I work with a lot of thought leaders that really want to build their brand and their reputations as thought leaders. So like Bruce, a lot of my clients are entrepreneurs, founders of companies. They are coaches, consultants, speakers, that sort of thing. So speakers are really good at speaking, not so much writing. So it's a great combination to have smart people to work with and take their best ideas and help them bring them to life in the written form. So it's almost like stories as a service is the way I think about it.
Yeah, and I was just thinking back to Seth Godin. One of his posts only in a week or so ago was about if you can talk, you can then write. It's nothing to do with thinker's block because you've always got plenty to say, but people struggle then putting that down into words.
Oh, yeah. I think that's the thing. Like I said, there's the talkers and then there's the writers. So sometimes you're blessed with the ability to do both. But if you're lucky enough to be partnered with one or the other, you can complement each other's skill sets and do something really amazing. So I love that opportunity to partner with really smart people.
And what did you set out life to be when you were a young lady? Did you get to do what you wanted to do in the end so far?
I am doing it right now. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Like Bruce, I struggled early on. As a small child, I was always the creative kid. I was the kid, in the corner with the crayons and I was writing stories. I was very, very shy, but had this very rich imagination and inner world. And I could think of fantastical possibilities and there was always something brewing. But, as you go through life and you get those messages about, well, be practical and that's a nice hobby and that's great. And, even through university, my major was actually in filmmaking. So again, that's about telling a compelling story. And, to do that, you're not alone. You're working with a group of people. And because I really like people and like working with them and really enjoy that exchange, what happened was, shockingly, I could not get a job as a filmmaker out of school. So, it blows my mind, but I ended up going sort of, what's creative? And I ended up going into advertising and marketing and ultimately becoming a branding consultant, which I love because, again, it's telling a story. It's all of those visual and verbal cues, sort of collectively talk about who you are and what you stand for, whether you're an individual, whether you're a product, whether you're a brand, whether you're a company, and love that. But as I moved through that agency world, what happened was I became more account Amy and dealing with strategy and people, and I could speak the many languages of design and production and strategy with clients, but I moved farther and farther away from creative Amy. So I wasn't the one, writing for the client. I was the one sort of the liaison between the creative and the client. And I was really good at that. So, you naturally progress and it was the path of least resistance, but always in the back of my mind was, but I'd really like to be creative, Amy. But, you have that fear and uncertainty and doubt and sort of that imposter syndrome. Could I ever be that? And so, for years, I was sort of content with being on the periphery kind of dipping a toe that I'm around all this creativity, but I'm not the one being paid to be creative. So, and that it gets to a point where you're like, it's not as fulfilling. I don't want to move so far away from it. So really, when I decided to, that I really wanted to pursue this creative avenue, I was very scared. It took a lot of encouragement, a lot from my co-author, Bruce, to kind of bring me out of hiding to kind of go down this path. But I will tell you, it's like full circle. It's coming back to that little girl who was writing stories. I'm delighted. I am finally doing what I was meant to do. And I couldn't be happier.
And that's nice. I remember when I was at school, I was again told off by my English lit teacher for writing stories about horses, because that was all that was on my mind as a 13-year-old.
Sure.
Okay. So, I mean, you still write obviously an awful lot now. You write for work, etc. But you've also got quite a following on Medium, as well as Thrive Global, which is Arianna Huffington's company that's launched on Medium. How have you sort of managed to get such a following there as well? Is that just your posts have just resonated with people, do you think?
I asked myself that same question, Linda, but I think what it is, I think my style of writing, my tone, my things that I write about tend to skew positive, be more about transformation, and really rooted in real life subjects and situations and struggles, frankly. So I think when I write about those things, they're personal. And, I think that a lot of folks see a bit of themselves in it. They can relate. It resonates with them. There are struggles that we all deal with. And I think, when you put out there a very curated set of images and writing, on social media, especially, that's great. And you're protecting your brand. But really, people respond to people and authenticity. And Thrive Global, in particular, is really about that struggle to maintain balance, in everything in your life. So a lot of my content and my tone and my writing style really fit nicely under their umbrella. And I've been fortunate enough that many of my posts have gained, front page status, and sometimes getting, shared by Arianna Huffington herself. So wow. I'm thrilled that, that's like, what happened? Me? So it's lovely to discover that that's happened. But I think there's just an alignment, and I do believe there is a desire and a need for some positivity and some encouragement and sort of that, that boost that people might be looking for, because everybody is overprogrammed and overscheduled and crazy, crazy busy, that, it's hard for some people to take a break. So when you offer them something that allows them to do that, they respond.
And that leads nicely into the book, which when I had a look yesterday on Amazon, and again this morning actually, number 4, which is excellent, health and in the health and stress category, and they're all 5. Yes. Yeah, I mean, well done. That's no mean feat, let me tell you. And all of the reviews are 5-star, apart from one. And if you read the comments of he or she, they kind of get a little bit confused anyway. So I'm thinking that they're all 5-star reviews because they don't really know what they're talking about. She even says so. Why leave a review like that? That's weird. But anyway,
we know who that is. But
do you?
It's complicated. Yes,
it's okay. It's okay. We're not aiming for perfection, Linda. It's just progress, so it's okay.
No, and having a review that's not a 5-star review always adds authenticity anyway, doesn't it? But
that's right.
To me, it's a 5-star book. Okay, so let's have a look. So I'm going to ask Bruce actually first. How did the book come about? How did you two know each other before? Did you just sort of sit down over coffee and think, hey, we should write a book?
Yes and no. So yes, we knew each other. So this is the new age portion of the show. So I'm in my house. I was upstairs in my house meditating, and I got the whole idea for the book in a flash. That we should write a book. That it should be called I Am, that it would be a series of passages that are I am ... optimistic, I am ... passionate, whatever it was, and that they would be uplifting and positive, and that I had to write it with Amy. And I emailed Amy and I told her that. And to her credit, after a couple of back and forth that said, to say that again, what are you talking about? But, and the deal was, this is kind of the unusual part, was we had tried to write a book previously. We kind of got stalled on it. I was not thinking about another book. So it really is the least strategic thing that I've ever done. There was no planning. But we agreed that we would take turns writing passages. We would not tell anyone. We didn't tell our spouses or friends, anybody. And if we got to a point where we thought we had something, then we would tell people and we would go ahead. And if we didn't, we just, no one would ever know that, we tried to do this. And it took us about 3 weeks of, we would write, like 3, 4, 5 each of us a day. We would take turns. So you couldn't write, the rule was you couldn't write 2 in a row. So Amy would write one and then I'd write one and vice versa. And if I took 2 hours too long, she might nudge me, but she wouldn't write another one until I finished.
And that's obviously worked out.
Yeah.
It was so easy. I can't tell you. I've written a lot of books, and that it was a pleasure. It was so easy. And the interesting thing is that, we would nudge each other content-wise. There were times that, I don't know, sometimes I tried to write one in Amy's style. Sometimes Amy would write something that would, get me an idea that I didn't have before. We were talking yesterday, and, we know about 85% which ones, I wrote that one, she wrote the other, but we sometimes forget, who wrote which ones, and it's very, very interesting how it worked out.
So this book sort of addresses the reality of self-talk and the powerful impact it has on us, positive and negative, but it doesn't actually give any guidance. Why is that?
Amy, you take that one, because you were instrumental in that.
Yeah. So the big thing, when Bruce and I are working together, and obviously when he mentioned like either one of us could have written any of the passages in the book, it's really, we're very much aligned, kindred spirits. And I think really with the intent, we want to help people. That was really what was behind this. Started as a creative exercise and then, blossomed into a book, but we really wanted to help people. And we realized when in the process of writing this, that the stories that you tell yourself have tremendous power. And whether they're stories that are positive, like I am a writer, or if they're negative, like, oh, I could never do that, or no, I'm not a writer, I'm not creative, I'm not smart, all of these things that really erode your confidence and kind of, take you down a really negative spiral path. But, in writing this book, we really didn't want to prescribe how you should use this or say, well, this, and because hear this, neither of us know the answer to that. We're not, we want to help people, but we realized that we don't need to tell you how to do this. We didn't want to be a how-to book. We wanted to offer a path for you to figure it out for yourself. So the book itself has passages, and in the paperback version, we've left every other page opposite each passage blank for the sole purpose of we want you to just have space after you read a passage to kind of consider the possibilities that maybe this changes your thinking, maybe it changes the story you tell yourself, that you have a chance to respond and react. Because, when you're caught up in this environment, and we've all had those instances, it might have been, an old English lit teacher who came down on you for your horses stories, or, maybe a parent or somebody else, or it feeds into your psyche to the point where you don't even realize that you're harboring these things. But you need that space to kind of separate out from those negative stories to realize, well, wait, there might be another way. There might be some positive things. And really that was our intent, was we wanted, each reader to read any of these passages and be transported to a new place, a positive place where good things could come from it. So,
and also what you just say, Amy, that I think people might not get is you're supposed to, you're not supposed to, you can write on the page. So we didn't just leave it blank for space. We left it blank so that if you want to write your own I am story, if you want to write what thoughts popped into your head, if you want to draw a picture, and thus the book very quickly, for people who take that opportunity, it becomes personal. Another reason not to tell people how to use it, just to suggest a few possibilities, because it becomes their book instead of our book.
So it becomes a little bit like a workbook, but I wouldn't call it a workbook, a thinking book.
Yeah, you can call it whatever you like. Book. Yeah.
Not thinking book.
Because, I mean, self-talk, I mean, I'm thinking here about Brené Brown and the voices in your head and that whole thing. Right. And that's something that I think everybody should listen to, that TED Talk when she talks about the voices in your head, because it makes such a difference to your life with your partner, those people around you that you work with, everybody, because we all imagine what's going on in someone else's head. But now you're giving us a chance to think about what's going on in our head and our own head, which, you know, I don't think about what's going on in my head as regards I can or I can't do something. Although, you know, every podcast recording I do, I worry that the time zones are going to get screwed up, that I'm going to fluff up and things are not going to flow nicely, or that the guest is going to give me one-word answers back. So I sort of think, I can't do this anymore. But really we can do so much. It's so much in your head. So you're just giving us the tools to think that actually I can do. People
don't recognize fully how much they are self-programming themselves. You know, and even the absence of programming can be programming. For example, if you say, well, like if Amy had said, yeah, I kind of like to be creative, but, you know, and then just left it. And, you know, 2 years go by and 10 years go by and 20 years go by and she doesn't do anything, as opposed to saying, you know, I feel this inside, this urge to be creative, and I'm going to nurture that. So I'm going to, you know, say to myself every morning, you know, I'm going to create something today. It might be, you know, a sentence, it might be a haiku, it might be a paragraph, it might be an article, but I'm going to create something. And even if you do that 8 out of 10 days, if you're but you look at it over the course of a month or a year, and that sort of positive or constructive or creative spirit can really make a difference. You know, so then you go through a year, you created 150 things instead of none. Or if, you know, you could take it the other way for an entrepreneur who says, you know, gee, I'm stuck. I've had the same sales for 3 years in a row. I'm going to do something different. If you take it to the next level, you know, of, well, what does that mean? And instead of being, I'm so stuck, you know, I mean, I have a new client who just came to me who basically said, I'm so stuck. And we went back and forth 3 times in email. And that's pretty much all he said. I'm so stuck. He didn't, you know, and so that's self-talk. I'm stuck, I'm stuck, I'm stuck. And you say that, guess what? You're stuck.
Gonna be stuck. So do you think, I mean, in a business sort of sense, how can someone use this book, particularly if you're in sales mainly? I mean, do you think you can really sell more by selling less?
So that what you're, the sell more by selling less is a big part of my philosophy for the last, 15 years. Yes, absolutely. Because, you know, the old sales approach is really not working anymore, you know, aggressive hunter-gatherer type of selling. And if instead you focus on relationships and trust, being of service, being someone who others turn to, being someone who, you know, is an actual human being. I mean, like, you know, not just like, here, you know, give me money, but instead be, Linda, I understand that, you know, times are tough this year. I'm going to be supportive of you. And, you know, someday you'll come back and you'll be successful. And by the way, if I can help you be successful, you're going to come back and you're going to buy earlier. And so I think that, you know, being of service is a much better sales strategy than being an aggressive salesperson. And especially today, where if you look at surveys of how, you know, especially in larger companies, how buyers operate, they try to avoid sellers for as long as humanly possible. They really try to do research online and you know, like in the United States, nobody wants to deal with a car salesman. You know, you want to know what the price is and which car you're buying, you know, and preferably just do it online. You know, say, hey, I just want to come in and pick it up. And so old-fashioned selling and aggressive selling, I think, is a completely outdated concept in a 24/7 social media world.
No, I think you're right there. Certainly when I bought my last car, I did all the research online. So when I went to the car yard, all I needed to do was check out the colour and take it for a test drive. And that was it. You know, didn't need anything else. I mean, when you wrote this book, and this one's for you, Bruce, you had a bit of an aha moment. What was that?
Right. So that was when I was meditating and seeing that it was coming, what it was seeing. I wish that every book that I've worked on, or that everyone that we write in the future is, equally like, yikes, I got the whole thing and now we're done. But, the thing that Amy and I were on another podcast yesterday, and one of the things that we started talking about was, so the first book we tried to write, we got stalled on, and we were pretty rigid about what that might be, what was or wasn't part of the topic or the scope of the book, and we would debate, not debate like argue, but debate trying to pin it down. What's part of the subject, what isn't. And in this, Amy said earlier, this is more of a creative exercise than writing a book. And when we allowed ourselves the freedom to just, kind of, it was fun to go back and forth and it was effortless in retrospect, as opposed to this rigidity. So to me, the after the fact aha moment was this, if you just let your talent, I was going to say creativity, but I think it's more talent, flow. And so the things that you take pleasure in, you're doing. And you're if you're working with other, whether a collaborator or other team members, that you are like, you view their presence as a gift, as opposed to, oh God, I gotta, like agree. I wrote, without naming any names and without being derogatory, I wrote one other book with someone else, and it was hard, because we were, again, trying to be rigid. And Amy, I mean, do you agree with that? That it was
absolutely
fun.
It was fun. It got to the point where you were anticipating. You were like, okay, did he write one yet? Because I'm ready. I want to go. What did he write? Yeah. And we'd feed off each other. So, I might have an idea that would pop into my head, but when, Bruce would say, okay, your turn, and I would see what he'd written, that might spark a completely new idea, which was fantastic. So it was really a joy. And, we're not just saying that. We really, it was effortless. It was so easy. I mean, this is my first book. So I thought, wow, it's setting the bar really high, Bruce. But right. It's like, it was fantastic. And a great
my only nit is that, so Amy, once we had the same idea, she wrote the Chameleon. And I was all set to write I'm a Chameleon. And I get in there and she wrote I'm a Chameleon.
Yeah.
No.
Around the same time. It was literally the same. Yeah. It's like, oh no, you wrote that. Wait a minute. So.
Oh no. She just stuck in there, and we hadn't talked about it. It just was kind of, but we had gone through the, we knew what the first 10 were. So we'd gone through the same, okay, my turn, your turn. What are the subjects? And so it's really that's freeing yourself. I mean, it's kind of, the aha is the same as almost the book's purpose, that, it's if you get into that letting, what's within you out, let it bubble to the surface, then it's a lot more satisfying, and I think a lot more productive than this kind of nose to the grindstone, okay, I'm going to be analytical and I'm going to have my 28 item list, and I'm just going to methodically go through that, and I don't care if the first 22 are bad, I'm still going to do number 23. And, so we just don't like that.
And it can be hard work writing a book, but you're right. If you've got something that is just flowing, it's just everything that's coming out of your brain and it's just getting down on paper and you're enjoying it, it is so much easier and nicer and so much more natural too. So Amy, you've got a passage to read.
I do. Okay. So this one is, I am giving myself permission to try, to stumble, to fail many times, to fall short of my own high expectations, to confront my weaknesses, to admit I am human, to learn from my mistakes, to not have all the answers, to acknowledge my strengths, to be kind even when it's hard to do so, to not worry about what others think, to let go of elements of my life that aren't working, to be unapologetically me and to be okay with that, and maybe to succeed.
Stuff to make you think. I'm just letting them all tick through my brain there as you're reading them all out. Very, very enlightening, very, very thought-worthy. So, well, we need to wrap it up a little bit here, but I want to ask you a couple more questions. But first off, let's just tell people where they can get the book from first. So over to you, Amy.
It's available on Amazon, and it's available both as a paperback, so you can take your notes and write in it, or a Kindle version that actually features a bunch of Bruce's beautiful abstract photographs. So he's also a photographer, but he's too shy to say that. So I will say it for him.
That's our deal. She says that part.
So it's probably better to get the paperback, is it not? So you don't see Bruce's photography, but so that you've got the physical book to scribble in.
You know, like we said earlier, I think, people use this in different ways, and some people wanted it in a digital format so they could have it with them and just kind of reflect in their head. Other people, like me, I like to scribble and doodle and draw. So I use it in that way. So we didn't want to restrict or contract it. You can buy both. Why not?
You can actually get it's either free or almost free. If you buy the paperback, you get the Kindle for
a very discounted
very,
rate. That's
very,
true.
very low.
It's true. We're not just saying that. It's true.
But we just made that up. No, it's true. It's actually true.
It's true.
But it's available.
We will come to your house and read the book to you.
To you, yes. Make you go through it.
I was lying about that.
But it's available at all the normal booksellers across the globe, I'm sure.
No, just Amazon.
Just on Amazon. Okay, all right. So a question to you quickly then, Bruce. What are you currently reading yourself?
So, I have on my book, Nightstand, the Leonardo da Vinci book by Walter Isaacson. And which is a book that I really, really want to read. And I get to the end of the day and I'm torn right now. This is kind of a very honest thing. And I try to follow what the implicit part of I am, which means that I give myself time to decompress, and I have tendency to just think until I fall asleep. So I have not started to read that book as much as I want to, because I'm trying to consciously leave this space, between I'm working and I'm drifting off to sleep. And so it's really hurt my reading time, but it's doing well for the rest of my life. So, we'll see if I can find a better balance. But
And how about you, Amy? What are you reading? Or what are you watching? Maybe you're watching something more.
Well, watching I have less time to watch, but I have finished Brave Leadership by Kimberly Davis. I just finished reading Daniel Pink's newest book called When, which is about the science of timing, and starting to read Jeff Hayden's The Motivation Myth.
Oh.
So
I actually read that. I love that book. That book is counterintuitive in terms of, he basically says people talk about how do you get motivation, and his point was you get motivation by you start something, you actually start to make progress, and it feels good, so you want to keep going, which is, forget all this when I get motivated, I'll do it stuff. And I thought that was he's a delightful writer, and it was really a pleasure to read that.
That's true, actually. I think what motivates me when I'm running is when I start perspiring. Until I perspire, I don't get motivated.
It's working.
It's working, yes. I'm finally doing it. All right, so final question to you both. Bruce, you go first. What's your one piece of advice? Life, love, anything, the universe. What would it be?
Stop thinking occasionally. I find that when you step back and you give yourself room to process, you give yourself room to, for a better idea to come in, for your, am I really doing this the right way? I find that all my great leaps, when they come after a vacation, after a weekend, after I meditate, if I go skiing and I'm floating in powder, it's those stepping back. There's plenty of time to think and be rational. I do it all the time. But stepping back is unquestionably my most powerful tool.
And you, Amy? What's yours?
The best advice that I've ever received is 2 words. Stop hiding. And for me, that obviously comes into play in my career, but it can be applied to anything. Fear keeps us in the periphery, in the shadows. But when you take that leap, when you give yourself permission, when you step into who you need to be courageously, you stop hiding. That's when amazing things can happen. So stop hiding has been really powerful for me.
Two good pieces of advice there, actually. So just in closing then, obviously the book is called I Am, Escape Distractions, Unlock Your Imagination and Unleash Your Potential. So that's available on Amazon. But if we want to find out more about Bruce, we can go to Kasanoff.com, I'm assuming.
Yes, that's right. Just my last name, Kasanoff.com.
Okay. And Amy, you have to spell that.
It's amyblaschka.com. It's Amy, A-M-Y, Blaschka, spelled B as in boy, L-A-S-C-H-K-A.
Excellent.
Amy, I just got a great idea. Why don't we change your website to amyamy.com?
Amy, yeah. Or just Amy B, yeah.
Amy B.
but for now, it's still Amy Blaschka, but maybe next week it'll be Amy.
Well, thanks so much for both coming on the show and telling us about that. That sounds like an exciting book, actually. I'm off to Amazon now to download it.
It's been such a pleasure, Linda. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, Linda.
You're welcome. You've been listening to Tell Us a Story. Why not subscribe or rate us next time you're on iTunes?